Lady Elgin was the greatest open water disaster of Great Lakes history.
Harry Zeik spent 2 decades researching and searching for the Lady Elgin, a Civil War palatial steamer that was lost in a stormy collision. It was the transport home from a fundraiser in Chicago that was to fund muskets for Milwaukee's independent Union Guard.
They came to Chicago, they partied, hardied, marched down the street, and they left late at night, got away from the dock late because there were so many revelers and people were having a great time. And a lot of citizens were taken along for the ride because the boat had to leave the dock. And they departed for Milwaukee, and there was a wooden schooner called the Augustus carrying a cargo of lumber coming down the shoreline from the north. The Lady Elgin was going north from Chicago, and in the process they had a collision off of Highland Park, and that's when the Lady Elgin took her death blow and she sank, losing 287 people.
Harry found pieces of the wreck in May of 1989, but he couldn't prove the giant boiler belonged to the infamous shipwreck until he uncovered a utensil on Lake Michigan's bottom.
Well, we used the side scan sonar to find it, but it was plain old ordinary cross-country swimming that we found a spoon with the name Lady Elgin carved in the handle.
Artifacts now at the Chicago Maritime Museum tell the tragic story. A mouthpiece from a bugler from Milwaukee's city band, and 2 of 20 muskets discovered, once carried by the independent Union Guard.
This is an 1816 Springfield, and you can tell the percussion cap has been modified as they did with so many of these guns in 1850 to 1860. This was found at the site of the Lady Elgin, and it probably is from the Union Guard.
This is a former flintlock musket, converted to use a more reliable percussion cap, one of nearly 700,000 produced prior to the Civil War. Wisconsin's militia had these guns issued to them by the U.S. government, but the troops were controlled by Governor Alex Randall. In January, the nation was getting ready for Abraham Lincoln's first term as president, with the impossible task of trying to keep the United States together as the South battled for slavery and the right to self-govern. Governor Randall publicly insisted Wisconsin would never break the Union, but at some time his head of the state militia started asking the allegiances of his soldiers. Would they heed a command from Madison over Washington, D.C.? Milwaukee's commander printed his reply in a local newspaper. Captain Garrett Berry wrote, "I don't believe the governor would dream for a moment of giving an order so clearly illegal as to order the military to commit the crime of treason." Governor Randall retaliated by ordering the 1st Regiment of the 1st Division disbanded, and Garrett Berry discharged of his rank. Berry had a friendly U.S. representative who offered guns, but they had to raise money to run the guard on their own, so he chartered the Lady Elgin for a field trip to Chicago. Is this one of the guns they purchased? We may never know. Many of the details of the gun are eroded, and Berry drowned when the Lady Elgin sank. It was Harry Zeik's dream that the guns, spoon, whistle, and other artifacts be displayed in a museum, but he would never live to see it. After a decade of court battles, he won the right to salvage the Lady Elgin. Court records say he agreed to pay Aetna Insurance 20% of any of the artifacts that were purchased, but he himself doubted anyone would buy them.
The only market I've ever seen has been when the museums and historical societies sell off surplus items for financing their museum upkeep. And that's what the real problem is. They're underfunded. They have tons of stuff they can't afford to conserve and put on display because of the cost of conservation and building an exhibit that it eats them up. So very typically, even the Smithsonian sells off surplus artifacts. So if it's a bad thing, why do they do it? The salvers are criticized for having that attitude to sell off the artifacts, but in reality, the museums do it as a form of survival.
Harry was just as pessimistic about the fate of the Lady Elgin wreck site, where many of the muskets had been stolen.
It's in a fairly high energy zone. It's laying on a hard bottom that doesn't have a lot of sand cover, so there's a lot of wave action in big storms. And the ecological damage is not as serious as the human damage. It's busted up, it's been mistreated by wind, wave, and weather, but the real problem has been that the state went out to do some exploratory work in the course of the litigation, and they exposed it, and now we've had some problems with things disappearing and moving around and some unfortunate events like that.